You can hear people, you know that they're talking and that there are words coming out of their mouth, but you're starting to notice that you can't understand everything that they're saying. And here's where that can get really frustrating. You did go get your hearing checked and you were told that it was fine. Or maybe you were told that you had a little bit of hearing loss, but you didn't need any help yet. So what's going on? That disconnect between hearing sound and understanding speech is one of the most common things we see in our clinic, and it's one of the most misunderstood. Most people assume that if you can hear, you can understand. That's not how it works. I'm Dr. Lane Garrett, founder of Timpanogos Hearing and Tinnitus in Utah, and I've been treating people with hearing loss for over 20 years. Today I'm going to explain exactly why this happens, what's being measured in a hearing test, and why that test alone often doesn't tell the whole story. Let's start with the standard hearing test, what's called a pure tone audiogram, because most people think that hearing test tells them how well they hear. It doesn't, not really. What it actually measures is your hearing threshold, the softest sounds you can detect at different pitches. That's it. Can you hear a beep at that pitch? At this loudness? Yes or no? Detection, not understanding. And two individuals with the same age and similar audiograms can have very different speech recognition scores. One person understands speech well in a conversation, the other struggles all the time. Same audiogram, completely different real-world experiences. This is why I get so frustrated when someone tells me their doctor said their hearing was fine. A screening you'll get in a primary care physician or a standard audiogram that doesn't measure speech discrimination is not good enough. Real life is not found in a quiet sound booth. If you've been told that your hearing is fine but you know something is off, subscribe to the channel. That exact disconnect is what I cover here, and most clinics won't explain it the way I'm about to. So here's what's actually happening when you can hear but you're not understanding. Speech is made up of vowels and consonants. Vowels like O, ah, and E, those carry the volume. They're loud, low-pitched, easy to detect. Your audiogram says you're fine, you're probably hearing those vowels great. Consonants are the opposite. They're soft, high-pitched, and they carry the meaning. The difference between fit, bit, kit, and sit are all consonants, and that's exactly where most age-related and noise-related hearing loss show up first, those high pitches. So what happens? You hear that someone is talking, you catch the vowels, the rhythm, the cadence, the emotions, but the consonants are getting clipped or distorted. Pass the salt will sound like as the all. Can you hear me? Sounds like anu ear e. Your brain is trying to fill in the gaps. It's cross-referencing context, watching for lip movement, constantly guessing. That's the exhaustion people describe after a dinner party or a meeting. Not hearing fatigue, cognitive fatigue. Your brain burning extra fuel trying to understand what's being said. Now here's where it gets even more clinically interesting and where standard hearing tests fall short. Even when your audiogram looks acceptable, you can have a significant amount of damage at the level of the cochlear nerve. This is something called hidden hearing loss, and it's more common than most people realize. Cochlear nerve degeneration involves a loss of synaptic connections between the inner hair cells of the cochlea and the auditory nerve fibers themselves. This type of neural loss doesn't elevate hearing thresholds until it becomes extreme, because the most vulnerable neurons don't contribute to threshold detection in quiet. What this means in plain terms, you can pass a standard hearing test and still have real nerve level damage that degrades your ability to understand speech, especially in noise. A 2022 analysis published in Scientific Reports looked at nearly 96,000 ears and found that word recognition deficits that can't be explained by audibility alone may reflect underlying cochlear nerve degeneration, and that significant intelligibility deficits can be associated with what looks like a moderate hearing loss on an audiogram. That's a fundamental limitation of the standard hearing test that most people are never told about. And there's a third piece to this, and it's one that most clinics don't ever even evaluate. Understanding speech isn't just an ear function, it's a brain function. Speech perception and noise depends on complex interactions between peripheral hearing, central auditory processing, and cognitive abilities, working memory, auditory memory, and the ability to separate one voice from background noise. Research shows that hearing loss is associated with decreased activity in the brain regions involved with speech processing, and that the brain recruits additional frontal areas to try to compensate for that. That compensation is effortful. It is exactly why a difficult listening environment doesn't just make you miss word, it wipes you out. And a standard pure tone audiogram or just understanding speech in quiet will catch none of that. So if you have that type of hearing test in a quiet booth with just beeps, or you were asked to repeat words in quiet, you didn't get a complete evaluation. You got a screening. A thorough hearing workup will not only measure how well you can hear beeps, but it's going to look to see how well you understand speech in quiet. We want to see scores that are better than 80%. But you also should have tests like speech and noise testing, like a quick SIN, because a quiet booth tells me almost nothing about how you function in a restaurant or in a meeting. Extended high-frequency audiometry matters as well. Standard hearing tests only go to about 8,000 hertz, but research shows that extended high-frequency hearing loss is associated with poorer speech and noise performance and weakened auditory processing, and most clinics never even look above that 8,000 hertz. And otoacoustic emission testing tells me whether your outer hair cells are functioning, which can reveal cochlear changes that have not shown up on the audiogram. Taken together, these tests give a real picture of what's going on with your speech understanding, not just whether you can hear a beep. Let me tell you about Robert. He'd come to see us after he'd had 2 previous normal hearing tests done elsewhere. He was 58 and still working, but struggling in meetings and on the phone. He'd been told his hearing was fine and stopped worrying about it. He told me he started to worry if he was just losing focus and maybe the problem was attention, not hearing. His pure tone audiogram was borderline normal, but his word recognition score was about 72%. That's below what we're looking for 80%. And his quick SIN showed a 9 decibel signal to noise deficit. What that means is that in a noisy restaurant, he'd need the person to be speaking noticeably louder than everyone else in the room just to follow what was being said. The audiogram said fine. The complete hearing test said something very, very different. The reason you can hear but not understand isn't mysterious. It's explainable through consonant loss, cochlear nerve function, and the cognitive load present. What's inexcusable is when those mechanisms never get evaluated because someone did just a standard pure tone audiogram and called it done. If you've been struggling to understand speech and someone told you that your hearing is fine, push back. Ask whether word recognition was tested, especially in noise. And then ask if they did extended high frequency testing as well, because the question isn't just can you hear, the question should be can you understand? Drop a comment below. Have you been told your hearing is fine but you're still struggling to understand people? You're not imagining it and you're not alone. If you want to know exactly what a complete evaluation should include, the tests, what they measure, and what to ask for, that's all in our Learning Center. You can find a link in the description. And if you're here in Northern Utah and ready for a real workup, it's word understanding in quiet and in noise with extended high frequency testing, the full picture, you can schedule an appointment in one of our clinics. A link to do that's also in the description. Please don't settle for hearing screenings when what you need is a real answer. Thanks for watching.